Okay. Welcome, everyone, to the Writer's Center. That was Raquel Solomon starting us off with some music. And thank you so much, Raquel, for joining us. And those of you who are here a little bit early, thank you for putting up with us figuring out the technical side of live music on Zoom. And we did it, though. So kudos to us. And that was beautiful, beautiful. So thank you so much for sharing that at the beginning. Just very quickly, I'm going to introduce the Writer's Center because I know I saw a few names I didn't know already from previous events. The Writer's Center is a literary arts nonprofit headquartered in the Washington, D.C. area, but we do virtual programming like this and all kinds of things to a national audience. So if you don't know what we do, check out our website, writer.org. We do 250 to 300 creative writing workshops every year. We do dozens of free events similar to this one. So if you enjoy what we're having here today, we will very likely have something you'll enjoy sometime later as well. So we really hope that this isn't the last time you join us if it's your first time. We really, really hope you're become a member of the Writer's Center family going forward. And we are here to discuss poetry, to share poetry a little bit. So I should mention too that the Writer's Center is home to Poet Lore. Poet Lore is America's oldest poetry magazine. It's been publishing continuously for 133 years, and it's been at the Writer's Center since the center was founded in 1976. So please check out Poet Lore as well, and I'll put some links into the chat window. And finally, I just want to welcome our two featured poets, Janet R. Kirchheimer and Jaclyn Piudik, and I'm going to hand off to them now for the run of the show. And I just thank you to both of you for bringing this program to us. Thank you again to Raquel, and thank you to everyone in the audience for joining us today.
Yes, thank you so much, Zach, to you and to the Writer's Center. We're truly honored to be here and to see so many faces that I don't know, and I'm sure we have lots of new people, so that's wonderful. We're going to read to you from our book, which is called Seduction, Out of Eden. And before we begin the reading, I just want to dedicate the program today to our teacher, Mary Stewart Hammond, who passed away in December. And it's how Jaclyn and Raquel and I met. And also Kip Zegers is here, who was also in the class. And was an amazing journey with her, and she was an amazing poet and just taught us all so well. So we want to dedicate to her. And what we're going to do is read some of the poems, and then Raquel, who will do some of her songs that she wrote from being inspired by our poems. And we also do want to open it up to questions and discussions. And so if you have anything, feel free to put it in the chat or wait, and we will be happy to talk about poetry with you. It's truly our love. So I'm going to hand it off to Jaclyn, who is going to read the first poem.
Thank you, Janet, and thank you all for coming, and thank you, Zach, for hosting us. I'm going to start off with the first poem in the collection. It's called Opus and Inception. Tear down a reed, the genesis, the allegory of a bang that begs orchestration, God's embouchure, a stream fashioned by cutting an arrow to give birth, the incision into chaos, a myriad of inspiration, and we astonished into form.
And the poem that I'm going to read is called Before Interpretation. Before interpretation, a vulture hovers over its young, obscurity a hiding place, where sky touches sod, promising involution, newness to be plundered, breath of mouth, devastated, impatient, at the surface, longing for the space of distance, alluvial wingspan, an extension arriving at concealment, in the havoc placed there in luxuriance, parsing possibilities azure, gradations of consequence that crumble latent with anticipation, becoming a stammer of flight. And now Raquel will play one of her compositions. Great. Thank you, Raquel. We're truly so honored that our work has inspired your music. So thank you.
Thank you, Raquel.
Sure.
The next poem we're going to read is called Demure Origins. Vital memory eliminates timeshare of Earth's decision. A sheave of mist climbs as bark, petrichor, and lemon flower.
Usher spark into bud, a rash altruism of hearkening, a seething contradiction. Wellsprings fracture into mercy from conversation.
The weaver dispenses herbs, constellations murmur growth, and music preserves textual vowels. Intonations explore.
Tussled heavens and descend to sever mystery, move fescue to branch. Etchings of pristine vetiver, bode, reveal upcrowded.
Turf, ravenous for broken moisture. Anointed seedlings trample vines where foxes break through barriers of threes.
Division lights a path among thorns and lilies. Radical rationing of time flourishes among spheres.
Sight to be moored, be ribboned in the firmament bark, deliberates being between hail and hallelujah.
Luster and mundanity ulcerating the syntax of years. A vault eclipses bedelium, allides with evidence of
Consensus and suppression reverberates in unspoiled chasm. Retries animosity, destruction, and disclosure.
casual in its praise, uprooted principles fragment, designs moon blur in stellar disagreement.
To negotiate amidst qubits of infinitesimal liquid notes. Invocations followed by symbols swell across interstices.
Awaiting ascension, an unsullied test, humors impend, bedecked as diglossia for attendant radiance, memorizing.
Greatness and minutia, gilding and stain, cosmos and crossbreeze. Carved and weighted forces enliven the foundation.
Of dominance, so desolation, bound in its giving of backlit pleasure into practice.
A model of motion, allegorical burn balletic, a prism of benign refraction ordained shadow into keepsake.
The howling mire, written in borrowed skies, cradles praxis, appellations indelible to sow the highest alchemy.
The next poem is called Gnosis by Blaze. It began a blitz in the bosom of bafflement, braids in gentle blue-black and a gigabyte of genius, bargain for gamble. Green billows against gateways, Briars gush on a bias cut, galvanize into gold and burnt offerings. A garden of bread and butter, grocery list for generation, benevolent grammar for a biosphere blessed and graceful, a glossary of becoming. Genre burdens among gabardine grasslands, burrowing for groundswell. Beginning is broadcast, a guarantee glistens, genus begotten. Bioluminescence, bride from groom, girl from boy, gift of guile, powder blue garters and begonias to garnish birches with ungoverned beauty. It is better. Grass-like benediction beguiles, galaxies of gadabouts garner baskets of gauze to bleed a bouquet into being. It began with brindled geode and gases berserk with belief, a guarantee of ground beckoning for birth, to become God's bling.
Thank you. Raquel will play another composition. Oh, thank you. I could feel the words going across as you were playing. Thank you so much. So the next poem that we're going to read is called The Receiving. From wisdom, an exchange of honor breached the molten blue, habituated light to soma, quiescent and unmanifested, impossibility became.
Unformed and void, darkness upon the face.
Boundless ether, a receptacle for prototypes. Odors amniotic thronged about, looked for figuration, bondage in dimension, in bloodmark, to be swaddled in grit.
Brash mortality, its analog unseen. A silkworm wove essence into body, crowned with motion and terrestrial existence, heft of wheat and honey-scattered seed, a psalm of rain.
Astonished, requited thunder basked in illumined desire. Oceans quivered, laid bare in release. Entwined silhouette imploded, phosphorescent, a primal point latent beyond color.
Char of white sparkled with tease and teach, breeze and breach, remedial flash brewing with cause. There, a world unzipped, a furl from follicle to foliole, escaping into recognition.
To bandage the ripening silence, underlock fragments supernal surrounded and abided, language expanded, a pendulum beckoned inside sullen keyholes, old as snow, earth rained down.
Let it unyoke the waters from the waters.
Imploring firmament from its shrouded crave, and through metallic slivers of entry, a nanosecond protracted into moment, into luscious hour, a strangle of humidity.
And eloquence ensured cohesion, receptive germ radiated into fringed fire, concealed and congested. Reciprocal enfoldment when retraction began again, and turned.
There was evening and there was morning.
To itself in tender recline, a wither before exposition, before disarray roved into wet fulfillment. Whether weed or appendage, aril or dermis, kernel fashioned into trace, vibrating.
Amidst a quorum of letters freed from limbo's opposition, they prevailed over equilibrium, pleated into matter, dancing organisms alive though unassigned, lubricated with what seeped.
Male and female were created.
From their very veins, cluttered ravines, spas for sapients, perspired in wonder laden with offerings for barter, elevated and contracted, chambers splintered, animated themselves.
Into astral curtain, a dome of indigoed prescience. Night came down, an exotic rage, surveyed its successes, magnetized into the irreconcilable repose of afterness.
Thank you. And the last poem I'm going to read is called Indictment, and then we'll open it up to questions. And if you'd like, we can read one more towards the end. This is called Indictment. The asking shatters, creates our likeness, whether to whether what is seen, heard, touched in turmoil. Are we angels astray? Gilded with reflection, we are sensate. Reckless in impatience, we slither through midnight's orchard, awaiting our fate given on that sixth day. We yearn to be clad in knowledge, warmed by logos and legacy, delayed in petition, a stuttering, exquisite indigence bears divinity into words. We face each other split in half, eyeing wholeness yet adrift in waking. We fall like luminaries in pursuit of the self, the truth that sanctifies. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. And we will take a few questions and we'll hear a little more music and see where this takes us. So just give me a chance to ask your questions here. This is from Fran. What were the challenges of collaboration on this book? What gifts came out of it for you both? Oh, I love that. Really, so we do not live in the same city. And we were talking—
the same country.
This is true. This is true. And we were talking and saying we needed to write. We needed to do something creative. And we thought, okay, let's try something together. And we just started emailing each other a line here and there. And then it just happened and it took off. We have talked about this a lot because it has been 4 years now that we've been doing this, and we just have no clue. It just started and it took off from there. And Jaclyn, I'll let you do the challenges and gifts, and we can talk about that.
Well, I mean, actually, I don't think there were a lot of challenges. I mean, it really flowed quite amazingly, that we would either do a line and do one line back and forth, or we would sometimes do a stanza, and then the next person would continue with the stanza. So I mean, this whole thing, the whole book was actually written online, literally, so it was really quite an amazing experience. And I mean, the gifts of it are, well, first of all, this book that we created, that's quite a gift. And it was really, it was really quite amazing. And this is something that Mary Stewart actually has said in her blurb on the back of our book, about the way that, we have, generally speaking, I think we have rather different writing styles. And somehow the way it all came together, we were able to just really respond to each other, and it just really became one voice. And that was really something quite amazing, so we adapted to each other's styles. And I think it was basically allowing the poem to dictate what it needed, rather than us trying to individually maintain a particular voice.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's one of the gifts of this book. And I actually wrote you just a few days ago about this, and that we've pushed each other and we've learned from each other, and we did what the poem needed. And probably one of the most important things that Mary Stewart taught us was to just get out of the way of the poem and let it be. And as you said, to let it dictate what the poem needed to be. And we respected that. And I think that's an amazing gift that we gave each other, that we gave the poems, that we gave this book, that we just subsumed anything that, we wanted. And we pretty much agreed on almost every single change, because we started with our lines. And then as the poem dictated, sometimes something came out of one line and moved somewhere else, or a line at the bottom got moved towards the top. And today there's still, even as I was reading, I'm not sure some of the lines, I don't know who wrote them, because as Jaclyn said, it became one voice, and it was just kind of an amazing thing. Jaclyn, do you want to take the next question?
Well, I think Lynn said that we answered her question about our process. So
Right.
yeah, it was just really back and forth, a stanza at a time. And we would often decide, well, like we have a couple of poems that are in forms. So we made the decision before we started the poem to work in a particular form. But again, we did it in the same way with stanzas back and forth, or lines back and forth. And I think what was so beautiful as well, especially like, in the first half of the book, where we wrote primarily about creation, that, we drew on midrashim, and modern interpretations, modern exegesis on the book of Genesis. But the whole process of creation, in that the creation story from Genesis, was really an inspiration for our own creation of these poems. And the language and the, kind of abstractness of the poems, we hope is, and I think they do, really kind of reflect the phenomenon of creation as it's described in the Old Testament.
Right. And we literally started with "in the beginning" as our inspiration. And and we used as many sources as we could. We both have similar interests, we both have different interests, and and I did a fellowship in biblical Hebrew grammar, and that inspired me to look at every word, every verb, every noun, to every verb declension and what it might mean. And then, as Jaclyn said, to just take off kind of from there. And we would go back and forth and saying, oh, what about this word? And let's look it up in this, and let's see what will work best here. And I think one of the reasons also that it worked is that we were willing to say, oh, you know what, that word doesn't work, or that line doesn't work, let's go fix it. And it wasn't, that my line is gorgeous, let's not touch it. We approached it as everything in there was up for grabs, and things came out and things stayed in and things changed. And I think that also was really a tremendous kind of gift. Is there anybody else that has a question? I don't.
Yeah, there are two.
Yep. Go ahead. Why don't you take that one, Jaclyn? The edit.
So Fran had a question for Raquel.
Oh, okay.
How was it for you, Raquel, giving musical expression to or around these poems?
I was starting to write it back, but yeah, I was trying to incorporate harmony with some dissonance, like the process of creation, not just of God and the world, but when people create poetry or music or anything they try to create, there's harmony and also the dissonance of overcoming, trying to write. And I try to reflect also, the feelings I got from the beautiful poetry.
Yeah, thank you. Because it came through. I just, as I said earlier, as you were playing towards the end of that last composition, I could see words kind of going across. And I think that's how, all this sort of creation of the world that, as Jaclyn said, was creation of our poems and work. And that when I would get a line from Jaclyn, I had no idea what I was going to write, and I would sit with it for a little while, and then I would do something, and then I'd send it back to her, and I was so excited to oh, okay, there's an email. Let's see what we did. And it went off in a completely different direction of maybe what I was thinking, and maybe for her, and it became this big creation in every sense of the word. Okay.
And we have another question from Sonia Greco. Did you edit the final collection when you decided you were done, or were the pieces edited during the process? Well, a little bit of both. I would say we submitted a number of these poems to journals, and some of them were actually published. So when we were submitting to the individual journals, of course, we worked on editing whatever poems we were submitting. But then I think the real editing happened mostly at the end, once we had a draft of all the poems and put them in order. We actually went through each one several times, and just so that the whole collection would have a coherence. So I hope that answers your question, Sonia.
Right. Yeah, and we did what we both also just decided was kind of, okay, we're now going to edit, take a big gulp because we know stuff is coming out. And we did some alone and wrote down our thoughts. We did a bunch together, then we went back, and then we would start writing, and and the usual poetic, oh my God, I think, does this sound horrible? So it was really wonderful to have a writing partner that you could just bounce something off of, because I'm sure for the writers here, it's always so hard to judge your own writing. And we were both willing to just do what the book needed. And, you know, and when we finally finished, I still remember when we worked on that last poem, and it was like, hey, I think this is actually pretty good. And that was a really wonderful feeling. Okay, and there's another one here. When did Raquel receive the poems, during the process or when the work was finished? It was when it was finished. And, you know, and we wanted to share the book with Raquel, and then we just started talking, and Raquel had said, you know, Raquel is a wonderful poet, and also a really gifted musician. And I don't even know how it came about, but the next thing I know, Raquel had some compositions. Raquel, do you want to add on to that? You're muted.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not much else to say. I just really enjoyed the poetry, and it just inspired some nice music creativity for me. So thanks.
Yeah. Okay, and Jaclyn, you want to take the last one?
Yeah,
Sonia?
so Sonia asked again, does the order reflect your process? I think for the most part it does. We really started at the beginning, and
Right.
so we worked our way through the creation story and different iterations of that story, and then went into the story of the Garden of Eden and the expulsion from the Garden of Eden. So I think for the most part, I think we may have moved things around a little bit, but I think for the most part, Janet, maybe you can correct me if I'm misremembering, but I think we did write it in kind of in an order.
Yeah, we did. Maybe 3 poems got moved, but not by much, because we wanted to stay within the story, but also give it our own creation, as it were. And so we pretty much just started from the beginning and ended with the expulsion, as Jaclyn said, and then we played around a little. And there are 2 poems actually about Lilith that are in the book, because we wanted to include her as well. And so if no one else has any kind of question, Raquel, would you like to play for a couple of, few minutes, and then we'll read you the title poem and see where we are from there.
That's it.
Thank you, Raquel. So we're going to close with, as Janet said, with the title poem, Seduction out of Eden.
Planting amidst silver powdered vapors, fades wistful, rivers ignite, set apart, branch into a traverse.
Bridging, line to lapse. Incendiary rufflings respire through steam-streaked traces, biting rhythm.
Fetters of entangled vines cajole presupposition to forsake isolation, engender name-giving clemency.
A vocabulary vertebrate awakens, unrelenting in its restless infatuation. Verily stir splinters, sepia movements.
Collaboration inures, there in words, in apposition, questing commences, rivals emerge, call out.
Dictum inculcates, inebriates nothingness into anima, a gradual piercing through boundaries of sun and self.
A chronicle of sleep, taken from essence, nexus without volition, a leaving begins, what unfurls.
What settles into consciousness? New lexicon rips open atoms and sinew to extricate disguise.
Subtle reservoirs allow thought, brushed by knowing. Visor and vigil give way.
Beckoning to another, ideas seek dwelling in onomastic serenity, uninhibited integument.
Eros' eyes delight, closes, then opens, sews a garment. In the cool of afternoon, hidden fruit anticipates telling a garden.
Filled deep with novel yarn and yearning, veneer falls from tissue, from portent to dream mechanics, rousing warm exhalation.
It was good, it was evil, temptation for sight. Leaves stitched to proximity, a voice withdraws, becomes Hamsin.
A rush of days. From above, grains beat thunder, foist thought for procreation. And from below, a centrifuge skims blind refrain.
Into gradual echo, hidden among trees. Where, urging for tonality, obedience, a precept that divides ardor, naked.
Aspiration assigns blame, bows charisma into shame-bound blush. One layer of skin sloughs into down, falls upward into praise.
A second melts, coagulates, girds itself with twindom, a fearless apprentice. Arrayed in the spoils of negligence, questions abound.
Answers remain desolate in their fervor. Implicated in testimony they conceal, they are exposed. A scrap of knife against breath.
Incision into innocence. Softening mocks fictionalized encounters between fabric and hide. Sibilance breeds narcotic beauty, allures.
A pronominal sounding misfortune, a scattering of enmity will not begin to heal. It chastens, crawls, and curses. The world takes
its shape in gravitas and labor pains. What fertile rondure will bequeath its molt to nourish hummus and human? What organic?
Abundance will elucidate a footpath of pain and travail as it begins to taint passion. A crush of rule hearkens expression and thorns.
Thistle whisper is heard in the field, the din of a quiet motion that slackens mindful prophecy. Comfort comes in future tense.
Awakening regret for what might have been. A taste of immediacy for tomorrow's writhing. The ground, reedy in its rupture, brushes off return.
offers its hand, forever alive in unrest, in secret contemplation. Shade copulates with light and montage breeds.
Its own favor, a single vertebra, a question of symmetry, pleasure in judgment's bark, tilled from the taking, concealment.
Impregnates opposition, a shattering drives them out with a shudder. Ecstasy turns, leaves.
Leaves.
Yes. So we thank you. I think just this poem kind of, aside from being the title of the book, really sort of sums up sort of everything that's going on. You know, I think we came from a point of view also that Eden, like everywhere, it's this paradise and nothing goes wrong until humans muck it up, and then, but that's kind of the way life is, and sometimes we have to be seduced out of whatever Eden we might be in, and that was kind of what we're working with. And Jaclyn, please feel free to add a little bit more.
No, I think you summed it up very well.
Okay. Thank you so much. If there are any more questions, we're happy. If not, we thank you so much for coming and for being with us. And we included a link if you'd like to purchase the book. You know, poets are not so great at salesmanship, but and also our websites. And we hope to see you at some point. Please feel free to be in touch with us. And again, thank you to Zach and the Writer Center on behalf of all of us. Thank you so much.